That night, the house that once echoed with laughter smelled of smoke and burnt dreams. I still remember how Baba stood there, staring at the gate, his own son locked against him, the Christmas lights flashing like mockery in his eyes. I swear, I saw something break inside him that day, something that never came back. That was the night love turned to anger, and forgiveness became a ghost in our family. Hey family, before we dive into this powerful story, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next one. Please like this video, drop a comment to share your thoughts or lessons you learned, and give your honest review. I'd love to hear what you think. Now, let's begin the story. I was at Baba workshop that afternoon when he asked me a question I'll never forget. "Did you hear anything from Demila?" he said, pretending to polish his old radio. His hands were trembling. I knew what he meant. Christmas was just a few days away, and every year before, Demila would have sent someone to deliver an invite, small gifts, sometimes even money for drinks. But this year, nothing came. Baba was the kind of man who never begged for attention, but you could see the hurt in his eyes. Ever since Demila made it, became one of those big boys in Lagos with money, suits, and a mansion, things changed. He started speaking to his father like he was doing him a favor by calling. That day, I tried to cheer Baba up. "Maybe he's planning a surprise," I said. Baba smiled faintly, but I could see he didn't believe it. He just nodded and turned up the radio. The preacher voice came through, "A man who forgets his roots is like a tree that cuts itself." Baba chuckled sadly. "You hear that? Maybe God still talks through radio." Later that evening, he asked me to walk with him to the bus stop. He bought a bottle of malt for both of us, stared into the distance, and whispered, "No man should ever be made to feel small by his own child." It was then I realized he was planning something. Something quiet but serious. The kind of thing that comes from pain you can't swallow anymore. That was the day everything began to change, the day pride met pride, and love turned into a wound. From that day, Baba became quieter than usual. He still opened his workshop every morning, still greeted everyone, but something in him had changed. He no longer talked about Christmas. He no longer played high life on his small speaker. Instead, he worked in silence, sanding old furniture like each scrape of the wood was an answer to his thoughts. Sometimes I caught him staring at Demila framed photo on the wall, the one from his graduation in the UK. Baba had been so proud that day. He even borrowed money to throw a small party for the street. Now, the same picture looked like a reminder of what pride can cost a man. One evening, I saw him writing something in a small book. I asked, "Baba, what are you writing?" He smiled faintly. "Just writing what this world has taught me." I didn't know until later that he was writing a list, names, debts, memories, even regrets. It was around that time he started fixing his old car, the one that hadn't moved in years. "She must move this December," he said, dusting the bonnet. "Even if it's the last thing I fix." Rumors travel faster than Okada. Within days, people began to whisper that Baba was planning to go to Lagos to confront his son. Some said it was about money, others said it was about respect. I didn't know what to believe. Mama Nkechi, our nosy neighbor, asked me, "Your Baba day okay so? I hear say he won go show that his rich Pekin pepper this Christmas." I laughed it off, but inside me, I was scared. Baba wasn't the kind of man to cause trouble, but when he made up his mind, no one could stop him. One evening, I asked him straight, "Baba, are you going to Lagos?" He didn't answer at first. He just looked at the sunset and said, "If a tree forgets the soil that raised it, the soil will remind it." That was all he said. He left early on December 23rd. I helped him carry his small bag to the motor park. Inside, he packed just 2 shirts, 1 old suit, and a wrapped gift, a wooden sculpture he carved himself, shaped like 2 hands holding each other. "For peace," he said. Before he entered the bus, he placed his hand on my shoulder. "Pray for me, my son," he said. "Sometimes, to heal a wound, you must press it." The journey was long. Traffic held them for hours. When he reached Lagos, he didn't call anyone. He simply found a cheap lodge and stayed the night, waiting for morning. That same night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing his words, "To heal a wound, you must press it." I didn't know then that the wound he wanted to heal would open deeper than he imagined. Christmas Eve morning came. Baba wore his best clothes, brushed his hair neatly, and took a cab to Demila mansion in Lekki. He told me later that the gate was taller than a tree, painted gold, with cameras and guards who looked like soldiers. He smiled and greeted them politely. "I am his father," he said. The guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. One of them called inside. After some minutes, Demila's wife came out, light-skinned, fine, proud-looking. She smiled coldly. "Ah. Baba. Demila is busy right now. You should have called first." Baba tried to explain. "I just came to wish my son Merry Christmas. I brought something for him." She shook her head. "He's in a meeting. Please, next time, let us know ahead." Then, to his shock, she turned to the guard. "Please, close the gate." The metal door slammed shut in his face. Baba stood there for a long time, holding that gift in his hand, the sound of laughter and music coming from inside. The world suddenly felt smaller. That was the moment the old man's pride cracked, and something darker took its place. Baba told me later that he stood outside that gate for almost an hour. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just stood there, listening to the laughter inside, the same laughter that once filled our old compound when Demila was small. When he finally turned away, he walked without direction. His feet carried him through the streets of Lekki like a man chasing his own shadow. The sun was burning, yet he didn't feel it. He found a bench under a mango tree and sat down, holding the wooden sculpture in his lap. He whispered, "Even the gift rejected me." That night, he didn't return to his lodge. He went to the small church near the roundabout and slept in the back pew. The security man there later said he was praying all night, but what kind of prayer? Maybe the kind that comes when faith and anger mix together. Back home, people started to talk. Demila's father went to Lagos, one said. They say the son chased him out, another replied. By Christmas morning, everyone knew. I couldn't walk through the street without hearing whispers. Some pitied Baba, others mocked him. That's why you must train your children well, they said. Money can spoil respect. Mama Nkechi came again, shaking her head like she was watching a movie. This world, N. A child forgets who cleaned his nose. I wanted to defend Demila, but I couldn't. Deep down, I knew what Baba felt, the shame, the pain, the sting of being treated like a stranger by your own blood. That day, I stopped trying to excuse Demila's behavior. Something inside me turned cold too. 3 days after Christmas, Baba returned. He arrived in the afternoon, dusty and quiet. He didn't say a word for hours. He just washed his hands, ate a small plate of rice, and went inside. The gift he took was no longer with him. Later that night, I heard him in the backyard talking to himself. You build a child with love, he said softly, and he builds a wall with pride. From that night, he stopped mentioning Demila's name. It was as if he buried that part of his life. But what I didn't know was that he had not buried it, he had only planted it, and the seed was growing. The following weeks, Baba changed. He started going to the market early, buying materials he didn't usually need. He would lock his workshop and spend hours carving, welding, and writing. When I asked what he was working on, he said, "A gift for the ungrateful." He stopped going to church too. The pastor came one Sunday to ask after him, but Baba just said, "Even God keeps quiet when his children forget him." The joy that once filled our house was gone. The radio was silent. The smell of sawdust and polish now mixed with kerosene and something burnt. I didn't know what he was building, but I knew it came from pain. One evening, he called me. "Sit down," he said. "If I travel again, and I don't return quickly, don't be afraid." I asked, "Where are you going?" He smiled. "To settle something a man should have settled long ago." Then he handed me an envelope. "If anything happens, give this to the pastor," he said. I wanted to argue, but I saw his face, calm but heavy. I knew this was not a journey of visit or peace. It was something deeper. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept staring at that envelope like it carried the weight of both our lives. For 2 days, Baba didn't come to the workshop. People asked after him, but I told them he had traveled. My heart was heavy. I didn't know where he was, but I felt something was coming, like thunder before rain. On the 3rd day, a man brought a message from the park. Baba had been seen boarding a bus to Lagos again. He say he go settle matter with his Pekin, the man said. I dropped the hammer I was holding. My hands shook. This time, I knew it wasn't about visiting. It was about revenge. According to what I later heard, Baba reached Demola house late in the evening. The guards recognized him and refused to open the gate again. He didn't argue. He just waited nearby, under a streetlight, holding a small black bag. Inside that bag was something heavy, maybe the thing he had been building all those weeks. When Demola wife came out in her car, Baba stood up. Their eyes met. She looked frightened and called inside for the guards. But Baba only said, "Tell my son that a father curse is heavier than gold." He turned and walked away. That night, no one slept peacefully in that mansion. 2 days later, news reached us. A fire had broken out at Demola house. No one died, but the main building was badly damaged. Some said it was electrical, others whispered that someone had poured petrol. When I heard it, my knees went weak. I prayed it wasn't what I was thinking. That same evening, Baba returned, his eyes red, his clothes smelling of smoke. He didn't say a word. He just washed his hands, went to his room, and locked the door. I didn't see him again till morning. The next day, he sat outside with his Bible open, though he didn't read it. I asked softly, "Baba, what happened?" He looked at me, tears filling his eyes. "I didn't mean to destroy him," he whispered. "I only wanted him to feel what I felt." He confessed that he went there to pour kerosene on the gate and burn the symbol of pride, not to harm anyone. But the fire spread quickly, catching the curtains inside through an open window. "Pain makes a man foolish," he said, shaking his head. "I forgot that anger burns everything, even the innocent part of your soul." By evening, 2 policemen came to our house. "Is this Mr. Adewale place?" they asked. "Yes," I said quietly. They entered, and Baba stood up calmly. "You are under arrest for suspected arson," one of them said. Baba didn't struggle. He simply nodded, picked up his cap, and said to me, "Every man must face the storm his hands created." As they took him away, I felt my chest tighten. The neighbors gathered, whispering, pointing, shaking their heads. The same people who once greeted Baba with respect now looked at him like a criminal. That night, our compound was silent. The chair he used to sit on remained empty, facing the road. I sat there till midnight, staring into the darkness, wondering if love could ever return after pride had burned it down. The police then took Baba away, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not for himself, but for what he had become. When I visited him 2 days later, he was sitting quietly in the corner of a small cell, head bowed. There were 4 other men inside, all staring at nothing. "Baba," I said softly. He looked up, smiled weakly. "Ah, my son, you came." I didn't know what to say. His hands were bruised, his eyes looked older. I wanted to cry, but he touched my shoulder gently. "Don't cry," he said. "When a man fights his own blood, both sides bleed." He didn't defend himself. He didn't deny it. He just sat there, waiting for whatever judgment life had left for him. A week later, Demola came. The whole station turned their heads when his car stopped outside. He came out wearing sunglasses and perfume that filled the air like power. When he entered the cell block, everyone whispered. He asked to see his father privately. The officers allowed it. I stood outside, but I could hear parts of their voices through the metal door. "Why did you do it?" Demola asked, his voice shaking. Baba replied quietly, "Because you forgot me." There was silence. Then Demola said, "You almost destroyed my home." And Baba answered, "You destroyed mine first." Demola walked out minutes later, his face pale. He didn't speak to anyone. He just entered his car and drove off fast, leaving behind the echo of a son who didn't know whether to hate or to cry. The trial began quickly. The charge was attempted arson. Baba pleaded guilty. The judge, a middle-aged woman, looked at him for a long time. "You're educated, Mr. Adewale," she said. "Why would you do such a thing?" He replied, "Because love without respect becomes pain." The courtroom went silent. I saw Demola sitting at the back, his eyes red, his wife beside him, looking away. When the judge finally spoke, her voice was soft. 3 years imprisonment, with an option of early release for good behavior. That day, Baba bowed his head and whispered, "So this is how peace looks, behind bars." Prison changed Baba. When I visited, he didn't talk about Demila anymore. Instead, he told stories to the other inmates, parables about pride, forgiveness, and family. They called him Pastor Baba. He taught one young man to read. He fixed broken chairs in the prison church. Even the wardens respected him. One day he told me, "This place is quieter than the world outside. Maybe that's why God brought me here, to hear myself think." He said he didn't hate Demila anymore. "Hate is like fire," he told me. "It burns the plate before the food." But I could still see the scar inside his smile. One afternoon, Demila's wife came to the workshop. She came in a simple dress, no makeup, no car. "I came to see where he lived," she said quietly. "I didn't understand the men my husband hurt." She looked around the small workshop, the dust, the tools, the old radio, and her eyes watered. "He carved with love, didn't he?" I nodded. Before she left, she placed an envelope on the table. "Please use this for his case, if it helps." I didn't open it till she was gone. Inside were 100,000 naira notes, and a note that read, "I'm sorry." I didn't know pride could be contagious. Demila didn't visit again for months. Lagos swallowed him, work, scandals, parties. But I knew his heart wasn't at peace. The papers wrote about the fire, people whispered about the rich man whose father was jailed. He stopped going out. He stopped smiling in photos. Success no longer felt like victory. His old friends called me one day. "Tell that boy to go and beg his father before the curse follows him." I wanted to tell them curses were not from God, they were from guilt. And guilt, once planted, never dies quietly. One rainy day, Demila finally went to the prison again. The guards called me later and told me what happened. He brought food, clothes, and books. Baba was surprised to see him but smiled. Demila knelt down. "Papa, I'm sorry." Baba looked at him long and hard. Then he said, "Stand up, my son. You knelt too late, but not too low." They hugged for the first time in years. Tears rolled down Demila's face. The guard said even hardened inmates turned away, pretending not to see. Forgiveness came quietly that day, like rain after harmattan dust. Demila began visiting more often. He started fixing Baba's case, bringing lawyers, paying fines. He told me, "I just want him home." It took months, but eventually, the paperwork came through. When Baba stepped out of the prison gates, the sun hit his face and he whispered, "Freedom smells like palm oil and rain." Demila hugged him tight. For a moment, they looked like father and son again, until pride reminded them how fragile peace can be. Still, it was a start. When Baba came home, the whole street gathered. Some clapped, some whispered. But Baba didn't care. He just smiled, thanked everyone, and entered his workshop again. He cleaned the place for hours, the bench, the tools, even the old radio. It felt like the spirit of work welcomed him back. He looked at me and said, "And peace lives where his hands create." Then he played music again, Chief Stephen Osita Osadibi's, Osandi Owendi. The sound filled the air like joy finally returning from exile. Demila visited one weekend with gifts, rice, wine, new clothes. But Baba didn't take anything. He said, "I have food. What I want is time." So they sat together, talking about old days, fishing, the farm, mama cooking. At a point, Baba said, "Son, wealth is not evil, but pride is like smoke, it chokes quietly." Demila nodded, but his eyes were far away. You could tell he was trying to understand the kind of peace his father now carried, the kind that money couldn't buy. One Sunday, our pastor came to see Baba. "Brother Adewale," he said, "I heard what happened. I want you to give testimony in church next week." Baba smiled. "Testimony? I'm still a sinner." The pastor replied, "We all are. But your story will heal others." Baba agreed. And when he stood before the church that Sunday, he told everything, how pride divided his home, how anger burned what love built, and how forgiveness rebuilt it again. People cried. Even the pastor couldn't hold his tears. Baba ended with, "Forgiveness doesn't change the past, but it opens tomorrow." After that testimony, something changed in the community. People started visiting Baba for advice, couples, fathers, even young boys. He became like a quiet counselor. He didn't quote Bible verses, he told stories. Real stories. Sometimes he would say, "The day you stop listening to your father pain, your own son begins to learn how to ignore you." His words carried power because they came from scars, not from books. But even as Baba healed, Demila battled inside. He wanted to fix everything, yet couldn't forgive himself. He started losing focus at work, arguing with his wife, withdrawing from friends. One night, he called me. "Sometimes I wish I could go back and open that gate," he said. I told him, "You can't open yesterday's gate. But you can keep today's open." He sighed deeply. "Maybe that's all I can do." That night, he sent money to renovate Baba workshop, but Baba refused it. "Let him come and work beside me," he said. "That's the only gift I want." So Demila began visiting the workshop on weekends. He didn't know how to carve wood, but he tried. Baba laughed often. "See city boy trying to sand wood like carpenter," he teased. They worked together, sweating, joking, learning each other again. People gathered to watch, the rich son and the humble father side by side. It was like life itself decided to give them a second chance. Sometimes Baba would whisper, "This is what peace feels like, sawdust on your hand and your son beside you." But peace, like harmattan breeze, doesn't stay long. One hot afternoon, Baba fainted in the workshop. We rushed him to the hospital. The doctor said it was his heart, too weak, too tired. Demila didn't leave his bedside for days. He kept saying, "Papa, don't leave me yet. I just found you again." Baba smiled weakly. "I'm not leaving you. I'm only resting." That night, as rain fell softly outside, Baba closed his eyes and whispered his last words, "Forgive yourself, my son." Then his hand went still. I've seen many things in this life, but that silence, that final silence, was the loudest. When Baba came home, the first thing he did was stand in front of the mirror. He touched his face like he was meeting himself for the first time. "Even my reflection changed," he said softly. People still called him the man who burnt his son's house. Some avoided him. Others greeted him with pity. But he didn't argue anymore. He just said, "That name, let it be my scar. I earned it." I noticed that he walked slower now, but his words carried more weight. Whenever he spoke, even children listened. Pain had carved wisdom into his voice. At the market, I heard women whisper as we passed. "That's him. The man who fought his son over pride." But one woman added, "At least he didn't kill anyone." Some people don't survive such shame. Baba didn't mind. He bought his palm oil and tomatoes, then gave the seller extra money. "Keep it," he said. "It's not for forgiveness. It's for peace." The woman nodded and said, "May your tomorrow be softer than your yesterday." When we got home, Baba smiled faintly. "See. Even strangers now preach to me." One rainy morning, a letter arrived, sealed in a blue envelope. It was from Demila. I gave it to Baba, and he just stared at it for a long time before opening it. The handwriting was neat, but shaky. "Papa, I have no words strong enough. I built a mansion and lost my home. I wore fine clothes but carried shame. Forgive me. I was blind, but prison opened my eyes too." Baba didn't cry. He just folded the letter neatly and said, "Let the rain wash this moment." He went outside, stood in the drizzle, and whispered, "The boy finally found his way." One morning, I woke to the sound of a car horn. When I looked out, I saw Demila, thinner, humble, holding a small bag. He knelt before Baba without a word. Baba didn't move at first. Then, slowly, he touched his son's shoulder. "Stand, my child," he said. "You have already knelt long enough in your heart." That was the first time I saw Demila cry, not tears of pride, but tears that cleanse the soul. Baba held him, and the compound finally breathed again. When people heard that father and son had reconciled, they came from all corners. Some came to gossip, others came to rejoice. Baba welcomed them all. "Let every tongue that once cursed now learn to bless," he said. Demila spoke softly, apologizing to the elders, promising to rebuild his father's workshop. One old man said, "This is not a story of shame anymore. It is a story of fire that purified." And truly, that day, even the wind carried peace. Demila fulfilled his promise. He built Baba a bigger workshop, not fancy, but strong and bright. Baba called it Ayuralua Crafts. He told me, it means the goodness of God. Because even from ashes, blessings can rise. He began training young men who had dropped out of school. He told them stories while they worked. Not Bible stories, real stories, painful ones, that taught truth better than any sermon. Among the boys Baba trained was one boy named Femi, clever but stubborn. He reminded Baba of Demila. One day, after Femi argued with another apprentice, Baba pulled him aside and said, "Pride is a disease that eats without showing symptoms." Femi laughed. "Baba, I'm not proud. I just don't like disrespect." Baba smiled. "That's how pride begins, it calls itself self-respect." That conversation stayed with me. I realized Baba was no longer teaching just carpentry, he was shaping hearts. During the town annual festival, Baba and Demila were honored. The council gave them a small plaque for lessons of reconciliation. Demila stood before everyone and said, "My father taught me that money cannot buy peace. It can only decorate emptiness." The crowd clapped, and Baba nodded with tears in his eyes. That night, the town danced like they were celebrating not two men, but hope itself. Even though Baba smiled more often now, sometimes I caught him staring at the sunset, lost in thought. Once I asked, "Baba, what are you thinking of?" He said quietly, "I forgave my son, but I still haven't forgiven myself for what the fire almost did." I told him, "But it's over." He replied, "Forgiveness doesn't end in one day. Sometimes, it's a journey we must walk every morning." Life was peaceful again, until one night, a small fire broke out in the workshop. It wasn't serious, but the flames reminded everyone of the past. Baba rushed in with water, coughing and shouting, "Not again." We put out the fire, but the smoke brought tears to our eyes. Later, Baba sat outside trembling. "It's like the fire came to test me," he said. I told him, "And you won this time." He smiled. "Maybe. Or maybe the fire came to remind me that healing doesn't mean forgetting." After that incident, Baba started a new idea, he called it the Legacy Project. He said, "When I die, I don't want my story to end with fire. I want it to end with light." He began building benches and carving proverbs into them. Each proverb carried a piece of his life. My favorite said, "The wound that teaches you is a better teacher than comfort." Those benches now stand across the community square, where people sit and think. One afternoon, an old friend of Baba visited, a man he hadn't seen in 20 years. They sat together under the mango tree, laughing like boys. Then the man said, "Adewale, life dealt you blows, but you turned pain into wisdom. That's rare." Baba smiled. "When the world breaks your bone, rebuild yourself with patience." They hugged, and I realized how far Baba had come, from shame to respect, from bitterness to grace. A small media group from Lagos came to interview Baba. They said they wanted to record stories of rural wisdom. They asked him, "Sir, what is the greatest lesson your life taught you?" He smiled and replied, "That a man's true riches are those who can sit beside him after disgrace." That clip went viral on social media. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know the wise old craftsman who forgave his son. Demila watched the video and said, "Baba, you are now more famous than I ever was." Baba just laughed. One day after a heavy rain, the sky opened up with a bright rainbow. Baba stood at the doorway, leaning on his cane. He whispered, "You see that? That's how peace looks, bright, bending, and never permanent." Demila stood beside him quietly. "Baba, I still wish I could erase what I did." Baba replied, "Don't erase it, my son. Paint over it with better colors." They both laughed, and I swear, even the rainbow seemed to smile. As months passed, Baba's body grew weaker, but his mind stayed sharp. He called all of us one evening. "My story is almost finished," he said softly. "But it must not end with pity. Let it end with meaning. He gave me his old carving knife and said, continue shaping hearts with your words. He gave Demola his favorite stool and said, sit on this, but never above it. Pride is a seat with no legs. That night, Baba sat under the mango tree till late, staring at the stars. The next morning, he didn't wake up. He left quietly, like a lamp that burns till dawn, then lets the sun take over. That morning, the world felt empty. The birds still sang, but it was like their song had lost meaning. Baba lay on his mat, peaceful, his face calm, like he had only paused to rest. Demola held his hand and whispered, you didn't even say goodbye. I said quietly, he did, just not with words. The neighbors gathered again, but this time there were no whispers of shame. Only silence. Only respect. Baba was buried behind the workshop, under the mango tree he loved. The pastor said, here lies a man who turned fire into forgiveness. People cried, but it wasn't sorrow alone, it was gratitude. They said Baba taught them something greater than sermons, how to live with dignity even after disgrace. Demola stood by the grave, shaking. I thought I would rebuild his house, he said. But he rebuilt my life instead. After the burial, the workshop felt strange. His tools still hung neatly, his carving bench still smelled of wood oil. I couldn't bring myself to touch anything. Even the wind sounded like him, gentle but full of stories. Demola came in one evening and said, we can't let this place die. I nodded. Then we must work, not just to build, but to remember. So we began again, not as master and helper, but as brothers who shared a memory. We decided to keep Baba legacy project alive. Every bench he carved now carried his proverb, and we added new ones from his sayings. One of Demola benches read, he who loses everything still owns the lesson. People began visiting the workshop again, not just to buy, but to sit, to talk, to heal. Baba had left something behind that didn't die with him, hope. A local radio station invited Demola for an interview. When asked, what did your father teach you? He said, that pride burns faster than fire, and forgiveness cools faster than rain. The presenter was silent for a moment. Then she said, sir, I think your father would be proud. Demola smiled softly. He already is. His silence told me so. That evening, people across town talked about Baba again, but this time, they spoke his name with honor. More young boys joined the workshop. Femi, who once argued too much, became the leader among them. He started teaching the new ones, repeating Baba proverbs like holy verses. Whenever they complained, he would say, Baba once said, a man's sweat is the ink that writes his success. I watched them work and thought, the old man planted seeds in us, and look, they are growing. One afternoon, Demola told me, I'm selling the mansion in Lagos. I was shocked. Why? He said, that house carries too many memories. I want to build a community center here, beside the workshop. He called it the Adewale Foundation for Youth and Family, dedicated to fathers and sons who lost their way but still found each other again. The town rejoiced. Some said, even from ashes, blessings rise. The day of the opening, people came from every corner. The governor even sent a representative. The signboard read, healing lives, restoring bonds. Demola stood on stage, his voice trembling. My father taught me that no man is too fallen to stand again. This center is not in his memory, it is his continuation. The crowd clapped, and some wept. The sound of applause felt like music made from grace. Months later, the mango tree under which Baba was buried began to bear fruit again. Demola looked at it one morning and said, see how it still gives, even after losing so much. He picked one fruit, placed it beside Baba's grave, and whispered, you still feed us, even now. I believed him. That tree became more than a tree, it was a reminder that what's rooted in love never truly dies. One day, Demola's old business partners visited from Lagos. They came with expensive suits and foreign accents. They said, Demola, we can make you rich again. Come back to the city. He smiled and replied, no amount of gold shines brighter than peace. They didn't understand, but I did. He had finally become his father, calm, wise, and free. The town created a new yearly celebration, the Festival of Fathers. It honored men who guided their families through pain and reconciliation. Demila was invited to speak. He stood on stage and said, "My father was not perfect. But he was present. And that's what every child truly needs." People clapped, and the mayor later declared that the town square would now be named Adewale Plaza. One quiet evening, a man arrived from another state. He said he was Baba's cousin, who hadn't seen him in 40 years. He cried when he saw the foundation and the benches. He said, "I left him when things were hard." Yet he left behind something greater than wealth. He left light. That night, Demila told me, sometimes, family finds you after the story is done. While cleaning Baba's room, we found an old photograph, Baba holding young Demila in front of their first house. On the back, Baba had written in faded ink, "If he ever forgets me, this picture will remind him how small he once was." Demila held the photo close and whispered, "I never knew love could hurt and heal at the same time." He framed it and placed it in the workshop, right above Baba's stool. Years passed, and people still came to hear Baba's story. One day, a young journalist asked Demila, "What would your father say to the world if he were alive today?" Demila smiled gently and said, "He would say, don't wait for the fire to humble you, learn from the smoke instead." The journalist nodded, tears in her eyes. She said, "That's the kind of wisdom that can save homes." It's been 10 years since Baba left us. The workshop still stands. The benches still shine. And when the wind blows through the mango leaves, it sounds like his laughter. Sometimes children playing nearby ask, "Who was Baba Adewale?" And we tell them, he was the man who turned his pain into a lesson for all. I sit there often, carving wood and memories, repeating his words quietly to myself. The fire that destroys can also refine, if your heart is humble enough to learn. And that's how his story never ends. Because every time someone forgives, somewhere, Baba Adewale lives again. And so, that is how Baba Adewale's story ended, not in ashes, but in peace. A story of pride, pain, forgiveness, and love, the kind of story that reminds us that no matter how broken a heart becomes, it can still find its way home. If this story touched you, made you think, or even brought a small tear to your eye, then remember, stories like this still live among us, in our streets, our families, and our quiet moments of reflection. Thank you for walking with us through every lesson and every emotion. Your time means more than gold, because listening is how stories stay alive. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like, share, and turn on the notification bell, so you never miss another journey through the life fates uncovered. New stories drop every day, filled with wisdom, truth, and the spirit of home. Till next time, keep your heart open, keep your roots strong, and keep believing in stories.